There are about 50 billion different ports of Rayman 2, from the N64 and PC originals to the Dreamcast and Revolution versions coveted as the best. And then there's this one. This is Rayman 2 for the PlayStation 1, widely considered to be one of the worst of the bunch given it axes a bunch of content seen in other ports. But maybe that's not such a bad thing, or maybe my nostalgia glasses have been slammed so hard into my face that they fused into my skull. Anyway, the point is, I've never actually seen anyone go through the game to see what was removed and also what was added, so I took the time out of my life to play through this game twice in order to see what was changed. And my conclusion? The first thing I need to point out is the visuals. My PC capture was at 1080p, and the PS1 capture was at the native 240p, so the PC version is naturally going to look better just because it's at a high resolution. But for the sake of accurate comparison, I want to take the time to show you what the game looks like running at the same resolution as the PS1 version. Not too bad if I don't say so myself. When they're both running at the same resolution, the PS1 actually holds its ground quite well. Obviously, the PC is going to look a little better, but at the target resolution, it's not actually as much as a difference as you'd think. Another thing I'd like to mention while we're on the topic of visuals is the two versions I mentioned before, the Dreamcast and the Revolution port, which, if I ever hear anyone call them the best, oh mate, just, the removal of the Hall of Doors from those versions, just sucks. Just sucks. Alright, I'd like to start, before I jump into the more broad analysis, with the second level, the Ferry Glade, because I feel like it's emblematic of the types of change that I think the PS1 port does. At the start of this level, the first section removed is immediately seen, which is the section where you jump over some lilies in order to reach the top of the branch. On PlayStation, it's replaced with this bounce pad, which means you skip right to being on top of the branch. This little remove is inconsequential, but really it's better to have that section there than it is to not have it there. The next alteration is a little harder to define. You see this little building dumping waste into the river? On PC, you just jump right over it and move on to the next section. On PlayStation, you go the opposite way and you turn it off, making the water safe to jump into, and that's how you progress through this section. I think it makes a little more sense to be turning it off rather than just leaving it alone, but it's a little less obvious that the way forward is through the water, though the camera cut to the water clearing up does help to rectify that. It also moves the first water section from the Sanctuary of Ice and Water to right here, so the player knows about the water mechanic much earlier in the game. I don't really think it matters that much, so what we see here is a port change that isn't really better or worse than the original. And in fact, it actually makes a little more sense to be disrupting the pirate operations instead of just leaving them alone. The next area is the little secret area, which is kinda lame that they got rid of. I won't go into detail, it's really simple, not having it is worse. And now onto the final alteration, which is these two sections. See, before I've been saying that removing stuff is bad, but this is where I get to change that. This falling down the shaft section is really cool, and it sucks that they got rid of it, but this riding the air current section is stupid and slow, it's never used again, and I'm glad I don't have to do it on PlayStation, because it sucks. What we see here is getting rid of something good, and something bad, which ultimately leaves the experience in much the same state as it was before. This is what the devs that ported this game to the PlayStation 1 did. They removed sections that, well, sometimes yes, they are missed. They also removed sections that just aren't fun, and they never removed anything that was super consequential to the experience. Alright, if we look at some more stuff that was removed, we can start to see the type of content that was axed from the game. So the Walk of Life and the Walk of Power entrances being inside the level, this little section at the start of the Menhir Hills, this optional route here at the Sanctuary of Stone and Fire, this dumb ship minigame on the Iron Hills, the Gloomy Isle. The only two levels to completely get the axe is the Top of the World, which I don't even like, and the Sanctuary of Ice and Water, in which the only good section, this fight, is grafted onto the Whale Bay, moved up in the level order, and the rest of it, which is just moving these two orbs, which is really fucking boring, is chucked away. And the only good section of this level that's left out of the PlayStation 1 port is the slide, which only lasts about 20 seconds anyway. We also have some stuff that was added, like these sick-ass ninjas fights. These might be the only challenging fights in the game. Everything else is just strafe and shoot. It's just really difficult stuff, I'm gonna tell you. There's also this walking shell chase that's only in the PlayStation 1 game, which is a nice way to make this level a little more interesting. Oh yeah, and then there's the voice acting that was added to the game. Globox! Okay, yes, it's not really that necessary, but it does make one joke land that really doesn't in the other one.
It's me!
And at the very least, they didn't change the music, because damn, it's some fucking good music. This is why I get so frustrated when I hear people say that the PlayStation 1 port is missing loads of content, because that loads of content is either redundant, optional, or just sucks ass. which is for more reasons than the content that's missing, but I'll get into that later. The first thing I want to talk about is how I just lied before, because there are two sections in the PlayStation port that are drastically altered, and the first one is this walking shell section in the Gloomy Isle. This part is really weird. I've got no idea why they've changed it. Instead of walking around the complex, you have to flip these 3 switches on this little weird platform thing. The only reason I can think of that they'd removed this section is that the area is too large to fit in the PlayStation 1's memory, but why they decided to change the design, I've got no idea. The second section is the final battle, which I can only assume they changed for the same reason, that the crow's nest can't fit into the PlayStation's memory, because what we're left with is just an iPhone endless runner. Shit. These 2 changes, along with a couple others, are ones that I consider to be truly bad, with, no clever workaround I can use to peddle my nostalgia. Alright, I want to move on to something I've never seen talked about, at least in comparison, and that's the way the physics have been altered for the port. Technically speaking, the PlayStation port is more responsive with faster acceleration to top speed and a more floaty controllable jump. Alright, now I've got to try and convince you that less responsive controls are better. Okay. The PlayStation 1 port feels so fucking satisfying to play. Sure, he feels a little heavier, but my god, the way the jump feels after the roll, the way you land, it feels so good. Just jumping platform to platform is so much fun in a way that the PC version's controls can't match. I honestly don't know how to describe these changes in technical terms, because from my analysis, the PC version has the better controls, but damn if the PlayStation 1 version doesn't feel so fucking good. Aside from 2 things, because of course, the purple lumps feel way too linear in their swing, and these walking shells are so heavy, it feels like one touch of the stick is gonna send you careening into space. It does make up for it in other areas though. Riding Sam is not fucking impossible, because there's no unnecessary delay between you landing and you being able to jump again, and your jump is actually high enough to get these lumps. I didn't go through every change because I don't want this video to be 2 hours long, and my notes aren't exactly, extensive. But what I can say is recording footage for the PlayStation 1 version was more consistently fun. I blasted through the PlayStation 1 version in 2 days, but come time to record the PC version after the first time, I kept on putting it off. Now that could have everything to do with the fact that I recorded it last, but I think it's a nice metaphor for the way I feel about these games. The PC version has higher highs, but it also has lower lows, and so the PS1 version isn't quite as good, but it's more consistently enjoyable. Or at the very least, that's what my nostalgia tells me. So, do you disagree with me? Don't tell me about it in the comments, I have a fragile ego. It's not like anyone's gonna be watching this to be able to tell you.